All stories posted on our channel are stories from our subscribers and created by us based on real events we've experienced and witnessed. We post new stories every day for your entertainment, that we hope you enjoy them. Thank you.
The Saturday morning rush at Maple and Vine Coffee had reached its peak when I realized my mistake. Every table was occupied, every seat claimed, and there I stood near the pickup counter, holding a tray with 2 hot chocolates, 1 black coffee, and a small mountain of pastries that my daughters had selected with the careful deliberation of art collectors choosing masterpieces. My name is Garrett Cole. I was 39 years old, a high school history teacher in Portland, Oregon, and a single father to twin girls who had just turned 7. The twins, Hazel and Ivy, named by their mother during a phase of botanical enthusiasm that I had found charming at the time, stood beside me with expressions of growing impatience, their matching purple raincoats marking them as the coordinated duo they insisted on being. "Daddy, where are we going to sit?" Hazel asked, her voice carrying the particular accusation that children reserve for parental failures in planning. "There are no tables," Ivy added, as if I might have missed this obvious fact. "We always sit at the corner table. Why didn't you save it?" "Because I was ordering our drinks and the corner table was taken when we arrived. You should have sent one of us to save it." "You're 7. You don't save tables. You get lost looking for the bathroom." "Nikki." The logic of this statement was apparently insufficient, as both girls continued staring at me with the expectation that I would produce seating through sheer paternal willpower. I scanned the room again, hoping that someone might be preparing to leave, that some miracle of timing would deliver us from this predicament. That was when I noticed her. She sat alone at a table near the window, a 2-seater that would be cramped for 3 people, but not impossible. She was reading a book, something with a dark cover I couldn't identify from this distance, and beside her sat a single crutch leaning against the wall. She appeared to be in her mid-30s, with dark hair cut short in a style that framed her face, and the kind of focused attention that suggested she was genuinely absorbed in whatever she was reading, rather than simply passing time. I hesitated. Approaching strangers to share tables was not something I did naturally. The social calculus felt complicated. Would she feel imposed upon? Would my daughters be too loud for her quiet reading? Would the request itself be somehow intrusive? But Hazel and Ivy were already fidgeting, the hot chocolates were getting cold, and the alternative was standing awkwardly in the middle of a crowded coffee shop like a man who had failed at the basic task of finding seats. "Stay here for a second," I told the girls, setting the tray on a narrow counter designed for exactly this purpose. "Let me ask if we can share that table." I approached the woman with what I hoped was a friendly but non-threatening expression, the kind of face that says reasonable person with a simple request, rather than potential nuisance who will ruin your peaceful morning. She looked up before I reached the table, her eyes meeting mine with a directness that caught me slightly off guard. "Hi," I said. "I'm sorry to bother you, but the cafe is completely packed, and I was wondering if my daughters and I might share your table. We can squeeze in if you don't mind the company." She glanced past me toward where Hazel and Ivy stood, their purple raincoats vivid against the earth tones of the coffee shop. A small smile crossed her face, the kind of smile that suggested she was forming an opinion rather than simply being polite. "Hey, single dad," she said, "can I share this table?" The phrasing confused me for a moment, until I realized she was turning my request into an invitation, transforming my awkward petition into her gracious offer. The humor in her eyes told me the reversal was deliberate. "Yes, thank you, that would be great." "Bring them over, fair warning. I'm not great at small talk, but I'm excellent at pretending to read while actually eavesdropping on interesting conversations." I retrieved the girls and our tray, navigating through the crowded tables with the careful attention of someone transporting precious cargo. Hazel and Ivy approached the table with the suspicious curiosity they applied to all new situations, studying the woman and her crutch with the unfiltered observation that children specialize in. "I'm Garrett," I said as we settled into the available seats. "These are my daughters, Hazel and Ivy." Nadia, she replied. The book is The Count of Monte Cristo, in case you were wondering. I'm on my third reading because I have a weakness for elaborate revenge plots. I teach history, I said, unsure why this felt like a relevant response. High school. American history mostly, though I do a unit on French Revolution context that touches on Dumas' era. A teacher. That explains the patient expression when your daughters were interrogating you about table-saving strategies. You heard that? Sound carries in crowded spaces. Also, I was impressed by your logic. 7-year-olds definitely get lost looking for bathrooms. Hazel, who had been quietly assessing the situation, apparently decided that Nadia had passed some internal test. Your hair is really short, she observed. Did you have to cut it, or did you want to? Hazel, I said, the parental warning tone automatic. It's fine, Nadia said. I wanted to. I used to have long hair, but it was always getting in my way, so I cut it off. Best decision I ever made. Can we cut our hair short? Ivy asked me. That's a conversation for when we're not sharing a table with someone who's trying to read. I'm not trying to read anymore, Nadia said, closing her book with what seemed like genuine contentment. I'm enjoying the company. It's been a while since I had Saturday morning coffee with anyone under the age of 60. The girls, sensing an ally, began peppering Nadia with questions, the rapid-fire interrogation that children deploy when they find an adult willing to engage. What was her favorite color? Green, specifically the green of forest moss. Did she have pets? No, but she had once fostered a 3-legged cat named Pirate. Why did she have a crutch? I flinched at this last question, the one I had been dreading since we sat down. Children had no filters, no understanding of social boundaries around disability, no awareness that some questions carried weight that casual conversation couldn't bear. But Nadia answered without hesitation, her voice matter-of-fact rather than uncomfortable. I lost my leg in a car accident about 5 years ago. My left leg, below the knee. I have a prosthetic that I usually wear, but it was bothering me today, so I'm using the crutch instead. Does it hurt? Hazel asked. Sometimes. Not as much as it used to. Can we see? Hazel, I said again, more firmly this time. That's enough questions. It's okay, Nadia said. Curiosity is healthy, better than pretending not to notice and being awkward about it. She shifted slightly in her chair, pulling up the hem of her jeans to reveal the prosthetic leg beneath, a sleek, mechanical design that bore no resemblance to the flesh-colored approximations I had vaguely imagined. See? Pretty cool, actually. It's got a carbon fiber foot that's better for walking than my original leg probably was. Both girls leaned in with the fascination they usually reserved for particularly interesting insects or videos of baby animals. I watched Nadia's face for signs of discomfort or annoyance, but found only a patient engagement that suggested she had navigated these conversations before and had made peace with them. Does it come off? Ivy asked. It does. I take it off at night, like you probably take off your shoes. We take off our shoes lots of times, Hazel confirmed. Daddy makes us because we track mud everywhere. Daddies are wise about mud. The conversation continued for another hour, meandering through topics that ranged from the girls' school experiences to Nadia's work as a graphic designer to my struggles with teaching the Civil War to students who found it boring until they learned about the espionage and sabotage elements. Nadia was sharp and funny, with a directness that I found refreshing after years of navigating the cautious politeness of parent-teacher conferences and single-parent support groups. When we finally prepared to leave, the girls had a birthday party to attend, the obligation of 7-year-old social calendars. I found myself reluctant to end the conversation. The feeling surprised me. Since my divorce 3 years earlier, I had approached social interactions with a defensive caution, protecting my limited time and energy from demands that couldn't be justified by my daughter's needs. This was really nice, I said, gathering our accumulated napkins and empty cups. Thanks for sharing your table. Thanks for asking. I come here most Saturdays if you're ever looking for conversation with your coffee. I might take you up on that. You should. She smiled, and there was something in the expression that felt like an invitation and a challenge simultaneously. I'm better company than Monte Cristo, and that's saying something. We said goodbye, the girls waving enthusiastically as I guided them toward the door. In the car, driving toward the birthday party, Hazel announced her verdict. I like her, Daddy. She's interesting. She is interesting. Are you going to see her again? Maybe. We'll see. But I was already thinking about the following Saturday, already planning to return to Maple and Vine at the same time, already composing conversational gambits that might justify another hour at Nadia's table. The feeling was unfamiliar, anticipation rather than obligation, curiosity rather than caution. For the first time in 3 years, I was looking forward to something that existed outside the boundaries of fatherhood and work. It felt like emerging from a tunnel I hadn't realized I was in. The following week, I arrived at Maple and Vine 15 minutes earlier than necessary, telling myself that the timing was coincidental rather than calculated. Nadia was already there, seated at the same window table, her book open before her, and a steaming cup positioned at her elbow. She looked up as I approached, and her smile suggested she had been expecting me. "Solo mission today?" she asked, noting the absence of purple raincoats. "The girls are with their mother this weekend. Custody arrangement. Every other weekend, alternating holidays, the standard divorced dad schedule." That sounds complicated. It's arithmetic mostly. You get used to dividing life into 2-week cycles. I ordered my coffee and returned to her table, settling into the seat that had been occupied by Hazel the previous week. The cafe was quieter than it had been on the Saturday before. Perhaps the rain had discouraged the casual browsers, leaving only the committed coffee drinkers. "How was the birthday party?" Nadia asked. "The one the girls were rushing off to?" "Chaotic. 17 7-year-olds in a bounce house facility with unlimited pizza and a DJ who played songs I've never heard. I aged approximately 5 years during the 2 hours we were there. Parenthood sounds terrifying. It has its moments, but also its rewards. Last week, after we met you, Hazel gave a presentation to her class about prosthetic legs. Apparently she did extensive research on YouTube and is now considering a career in biomedical engineering." Nadia laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her face. "I've inspired a future scientist. That might be my greatest accomplishment." "You made an impression. Both girls talked about you all week. Ivy wanted to know if you could come to dinner. I explained that we don't usually invite people we've met once to family dinners." Why not? Some of the best friendships start with shared tables in crowded coffee shops." "Is that how your friendships typically begin?" "My friendships typically begin with someone asking if I need help, which I don't, followed by an awkward conversation where I have to explain that I'm actually doing fine, which leads to them feeling embarrassed and me feeling annoyed." She shrugged. "You didn't do any of that. You asked to share a table like I was any other person sitting alone." It was refreshing. I didn't even notice the crutch until after I'd decided to ask. I know, that's what I mean. Most people see the crutch first, or the prosthetic when I'm wearing it, and everything else becomes secondary. You saw the empty chair. The observation landed with more weight than she probably intended. I thought about how I saw the world, what I noticed first about people, what assumptions I made without realizing I was making them. The morning light through the window caught the angles of Nadia's face, and I found myself studying her more carefully than I had the previous week. Not her leg or her crutch, but the intelligence in her eyes and the way her hands moved when she talked. "Can I ask what happened?" I said. "The accident. If you don't want to talk about it, that's completely fine." "I don't mind. It was 5 years ago, like I told the girls. I was driving home from a work event, a design conference in Seattle, and a truck crossed the center line on Highway 26. Head-on collision. The driver of the truck was drunk. He died at the scene. I was pinned in my car for 2 hours before they could extract me, and by the time I reached the hospital, the damage to my leg was too extensive to save." She recounted the story with the practiced efficiency of someone who had told it many times before, the emotional edges worn smooth by repetition. But I heard the weight beneath the words, the trauma that no amount of retelling could fully process. "I'm sorry," I said, because what else was there to say? "Thank you." It took a long time to reach a place where I could talk about it without falling apart. Years of physical therapy, years of regular therapy, years of learning to live in a body that was suddenly different from the one I'd always known. She paused, turning her coffee cup in her hands. The hardest part wasn't the leg, actually. The hardest part was the relationship that ended because my boyfriend couldn't handle being with someone who was damaged. His word, not mine. I don't even know what to say. That's horrible. It was clarifying. I learned a lot about him in those few months after the accident. I learned a lot about myself, too. About what I was willing to accept and what I wasn't. How long were you together? 4 years. We were talking about marriage, about kids, about the whole future package. Then the accident happened, and it all evaporated. He stayed for 8 months, long enough to seem supportive, not long enough to actually be supportive. And then he left. Said he needed to find himself, which apparently required finding himself in the company of a woman with 2 functioning legs. The bitterness in her voice was faint, but detectable, the scar tissue of old wounds. I recognized the tone, because I had heard it in my own voice when discussing my divorce, the lingering resentment that time softened but never entirely erased. "My wife left because she was bored," I offered, the confession emerging before I had consciously decided to share it. Not bored of me, specifically, bored of the life we had built, the house, the routine, the predictability of raising kids. She wanted adventure. She wanted spontaneity. She wanted to feel alive in ways that suburban parenthood apparently couldn't provide. So she left. She moved to Costa Rica, started a yoga retreat business with a man she met at a personal development seminar. They're very happy, according to her Instagram. Lots of sunsets and inspirational quotes. And the girls? She sees them every other weekend, like I said. She moved back to Portland after the retreat thing didn't work out. Different man now, same general philosophy of following her bliss wherever it leads. She loves the girls in her way. She's just not built for the daily grind of parenting. So you do the daily grind alone. Not alone, exactly. I have parents who help when they can, friends who understand that my social life revolves around school schedules and bedtimes. But yes, most of the time it's just me and the girls, figuring it out as we go. Nadia nodded slowly, processing the information. "That's why the girls called you single dad when they were asking about the table. It's how they think of you." "I suppose so. It's how I think of myself most days. Father first, everything else second. That's admirable. Exhausting probably, but admirable. Exhausting definitely. Admirable is generous." We talked for another 2 hours, the coffee growing cold as the conversation grew warm. I learned that Nadia had grown up in Bend, moved to Portland for art school, built a successful graphic design business that she ran from her apartment. She had clients across the country, which allowed her the flexibility to work around her physical limitations. Not that she would describe them as limitations, she clarified. They were simply different parameters, different variables to account for in the equation of daily life. I told her about my path to teaching, the history degree I had pursued out of genuine passion, the education credentials I had added when passion didn't pay bills, the job at Lincoln High School that had started as a temporary position and become a 14-year career. I described the particular joy of reaching a student who thought they hated history, the moment when something clicked and they realized that the past was actually interesting. "You light up when you talk about teaching," Nadia observed. "Your whole face changes. I love it. Even the frustrating parts, the grading and the administrative nonsense and the parents who think their kid deserves better grades than their work justifies. The actual teaching, the moments in the classroom that never gets old. It's good to love what you do. Not everyone finds that. Do you love design?" "I do. It's problem-solving with aesthetics, finding visual solutions to communication challenges. Every project is different, every client has different needs, and I get to spend my days creating things that exist in the world after I'm done with them." She smiled. Plus, I can do it in my pajamas if I want. The work-from-home life has its perks. The cafe was beginning to empty as the lunch hour approached, the morning crowd giving way to the afternoon shift. I realized with surprise that nearly 3 hours had passed, more time than I typically spent on any social activity that didn't involve my daughters. I should probably go, I said reluctantly. I have grading to do, and if I don't start now, I'll be up until midnight. The glamorous life of a teacher. It's more glamorous than you'd think. Red pens, coffee stains, the occasional profound observation about the Spanish-American War. Very exciting stuff. Nadia stood, reaching for her crutch with the practiced ease of long habit. Next Saturday? I'll be here. The girls will be back, though. Fair warning. I like the girls. Bring them. They might ask more questions about your leg. I'll survive. Maybe I'll prepare a presentation. Since I've apparently inspired a future biomedical engineer, I should take my educational responsibilities seriously. We walked out together, me holding the door while she navigated the threshold, not because she needed help, but because holding doors was something I did automatically, had done since childhood, would do regardless of whether the person behind me had one leg or two. She seemed to understand this, accepting the gesture without comment. See you next week, Garrett. See you next week, Nadia. I watched her walk toward a car parked nearby, watched the particular rhythm of her movement, the crutch and the prosthetic working in concert to carry her forward. She moved with confidence, without apology, without the self-consciousness that I might have expected. She moved like someone who had fought hard to reclaim her body and had won. Driving home, I found myself replaying fragments of our conversation, searching for meaning in the things she had said and the things she hadn't. The connection between us was undeniable, a compatibility of minds and temperaments that felt rare and valuable. But connection was complicated when you were a single parent, when every relationship had implications for the children who depended on you. I wasn't sure what I wanted from Nadia, or what she might want from me. I only knew that I wanted to keep talking to her, keep learning about her, keep showing up at Maple and Vine on Saturday mornings with the hope that she would be there too. For now, that was enough. The Saturday mornings became ritual. Weeks accumulated into months, autumn fading into winter, and winter softening into spring. And through all of it, Nadia and I met at Maple and Vine with a consistency that felt both deliberate and natural. The girls adored her. This was evident from the beginning, but became increasingly pronounced as the weeks passed. Hazel developed the habit of preparing questions in advance, arriving at the coffee shop with lists written in her careful 7-year-old handwriting. What was Nadia's favorite animal? Octopus. They were smarter than most people. Had she ever traveled outside the country? Yes, to Japan and Portugal and Peru before the accident made travel more complicated. What did she want to be when she was a kid? A marine biologist, but she couldn't handle the smell of fish. Ivy's attachment manifested differently, physical rather than intellectual. She would position herself as close to Nadia as possible, leaning against her arm while she talked, asking permission to touch the prosthetic leg that had become familiar rather than strange. Nadia received this attention with patience and warmth, never making Ivy feel like a burden, even when her neediness was obvious. She's seeking maternal connection, I explained one Saturday, when the girls had temporarily abandoned us for the pastry counter. Their mother isn't exactly demonstrative. When they're with her, it's activities and outings, but not a lot of physical affection. That must be hard for them. They're resilient. Kids adapt. But I think they're drawn to you because you're available, I guess, present in a way that feels safe to them. I don't mind. I never thought I'd be particularly good with kids. It wasn't something I had much experience with before, but your girls are easy to like. They're easy to like when they're being charming at a coffee shop. You should see them at bedtime when they're overtired and refusing to brush their teeth. I'm sure even that version has its appeal. The comment hung in the air between us, carrying weight that neither of us explicitly acknowledged. The implication was clear. Nadia was imagining herself in the context of bedtime routines, of the daily domesticity that constituted my life. Whether she wanted to be part of that context remained unspoken. Our relationship existed in an ambiguous space, more than friendship, less than romance, defined by Saturday mornings and occasional text messages rather than dates or declarations. I found myself thinking about her during the week, wondering what she was working on, hoping she was having a good day. But I hadn't taken any steps to move the relationship forward, paralyzed by the complications that such movement would entail. Everything changed on a Saturday in late March, when rain was pounding against the windows of Maple and Vine, and the girls had gone to the bathroom together, leaving Nadia and me alone at the table. "Can I ask you something?" she said, her tone more serious than our usual Saturday banter. "Of course. What is this? What we're doing here?" I felt my heart rate increase, the question landing like a stone dropped into still water. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we've been meeting every Saturday for 5 months. Your daughters treat me like a family friend. We text each other random thoughts during the week. Last Tuesday, you sent me a picture of a sunset because you thought I'd appreciate the colors." She paused, her eyes meeting mine with the directness I had come to associate with her. "That's not nothing, Garrett, but it's also not something we've ever talked about, so I'm asking, what is this?" I had no prepared answer, no carefully crafted response that would satisfy the question. The truth was that I didn't know, that I had been deliberately avoiding knowing, hoping the ambiguity would somehow resolve itself without requiring me to take risks. "I like you," I said finally, "more than I expected to, more than I've liked anyone since my divorce. But I have the girls, and I'm terrified of introducing someone into their lives and then having it not work out. They've already been through one major disruption. I don't want to create another one. So you've been keeping me at arm's length, enjoying the connection but not committing to it." "Yes, and I realize that's not fair to you." Nadia nodded slowly, processing my answer. "I've been doing something similar, if we're being honest. I like you too, more than I've liked anyone since my accident, since Daniel left. But I'm scared of being rejected again, of investing in something that falls apart because the reality of being with me is harder than the idea of it." "The reality of being with you isn't hard. You don't know that. You've seen me at coffee shops, at my best, with time to prepare and rest and present the version of myself I want people to see. You haven't seen me on bad days, when the phantom pain is unbearable and I can barely get out of bed. You haven't seen me frustrated with my prosthetic, angry at my body for not working the way it's supposed to. That doesn't change how I feel. Maybe not. But it might change how you feel in a year, or 2 years, or 5 years. Daniel didn't plan to leave me. He thought he could handle it. And then he discovered he couldn't. I can't go through that again, Garrett. I'm not strong enough." The girls returned from the bathroom before I could respond, their energy disrupting the serious tone of our conversation. We shifted back into lighter territory, but the questions Nadia had raised remained present, a subterranean current beneath the surface of our interaction. That night, after the girls were asleep, I sat in my living room and thought about what I wanted. The calculus was complicated. My daughter's well-being, my own loneliness, Nadia's fears and needs, the risks and rewards of opening myself to love again. Every variable mattered, and the equation had no clear solution. I texted her around 10 o'clock. "I don't have all the answers, but I know I don't want to stop seeing you. Can we figure this out together?" Her response came quickly. "I'd like that, but I need you to understand what you're signing up for. Not the idealized version of me, the real one. I want the real one. That's the whole point." We agreed to meet the following Tuesday, not at Maple and Vine, not with the girls, but at a restaurant downtown where we could talk without interruption. It would be our first official date, 5 months after our first conversation. The timing was glacial by normal standards, but we had both been moving slowly for reasons that made sense, approaching each other with the caution of people who had been hurt before and were determined not to be hurt again. I didn't know if it would work. I didn't know if I could be what Nadia needed. or if she could fit into the complicated architecture of my life with the girls. But I knew that not trying would haunt me, that the possibility of something real was worth the risk of something painful. For the first time in years, I was choosing hope over caution. It felt terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The restaurant Nadia chose was called Ember and Oak, a farm-to-table establishment in the Pearl District that I had heard about but never visited. It was the kind of place where menus changed seasonally and servers described dishes with the reverence usually reserved for sacred texts. I arrived early, nervous in a way I hadn't been since my 20s, and waited at a table near the back where we would have some privacy. She entered at exactly 7 o'clock. Punctual, I was learning, was one of her defining characteristics. She was wearing the prosthetic tonight rather than using her crutch, and she moved through the restaurant with confidence, navigating between tables with the practiced ease of someone who had long ago made peace with her body's particular requirements. "You look nice," I said as she sat down. It was inadequate. She looked beautiful, in a dark green dress that complemented her eyes and a silver necklace that drew attention to her collarbone. But my vocabulary had apparently abandoned me in the face of actual romantic pressure. "You too. I don't think I've ever seen you in anything except dad clothes. Turns out you clean up well." Dad clothes are my uniform. Button-down shirts and khakis, the outfit of history teachers everywhere. It's a good uniform. But this is better. We ordered wine and appetizers, falling into the rhythm of conversation that had become familiar over months of Saturday mornings. But there was something different about talking across a restaurant table in the evening without children to mediate our interaction. The intimacy was more pronounced, the stakes more obvious. "Tell me something I don't know about you," Nadia said. "Something you haven't mentioned in 5 months of coffee shop conversations." I considered the question, searching for a revelation that was meaningful without being melodramatic. When I was in college, I spent a summer working on an archaeological dig in New Mexico. We were excavating a Pueblo site, uncovering pottery and tools that had been buried for centuries. It was the most exciting thing I'd ever done, holding history in my hands, literally. I almost switched my major to archaeology. Why didn't you? Money, mostly. Archaeologists don't make much, and I was already thinking about the kind of life I wanted to have. Family, stability, a house with a backyard. Teaching history seemed like a way to keep the passion while also building something practical. Do you regret it? Sometimes, not the choice itself, but the roads not taken. I wonder who I would have been if I'd followed a different path. But then I look at Hazel and Ivy, and I know that any path that didn't lead to them wouldn't have been worth taking. Nadia nodded, understanding in her expression. I have a similar thing. Before the accident, I was on track to start my own design agency. I had partners lined up, investors interested, a whole business plan. Then the accident happened, and the recovery took years. And by the time I was functional again, the opportunity had passed. The partners had moved on. The investors had found other projects. That must have been devastating. It was, but it also led me to freelancing, which turned out to suit me better. I have control over my schedule, my clients, my entire working life. The agency would have meant employees and overhead and constant stress. This way is simpler. Silver linings. I hate that phrase, actually. People say it like every tragedy has a built-in consolation prize, like the universe is fair and everything balances out in the end. The truth is that bad things happen, and they just happen. They don't lead anywhere unless you force them to. The freelancing wasn't a silver lining. It was a choice I made to rebuild my life after it fell apart. I get credit for that, not the universe. The fierceness in her voice was surprising and attractive. I realized that I had been seeing Nadia through a lens of quiet resilience, of gentle acceptance. But there was fire beneath the surface, a determination that had carried her through trauma and recovery and into the person sitting across from me now. "I like that," I said. "The idea that rebuilding is a choice, not a gift. It feels more honest." Honesty is important to me, maybe too important sometimes. I've scared off potential friends by being too direct, too unwilling to soften uncomfortable truths. You haven't scared me off. Not yet, but we're only on our first official date. Give it time. We laughed, the tension breaking, and the rest of the dinner unfolded with increasing ease. We talked about everything, our families, our fears, our hopes for the future. I told her about the challenges of single parenting, the constant guilt and exhaustion and occasional joy. She told me about the loneliness of her life, the way she had built walls around herself to avoid the pain of rejection. "Can I ask about Daniel?" I said as the dessert arrived. "The boyfriend who left after the accident. You mentioned him before, but I don't know the details. What do you want to know?" "Whatever you're willing to share. I want to understand what you went through." She took a deep breath, her fingers tracing the stem of her wine glass. "Daniel was my college boyfriend. We met freshman year and were together all through school and then for 6 years afterward. We were planning to get married, not officially engaged, but talking about it, looking at rings. He was my person, or so I thought." "What happened after the accident?" "At first, he was perfect. He was at the hospital every day, holding my hand, telling me everything would be okay. He stayed with me through the surgery, through the initial recovery, through all the terrible early stages when I was learning to live without my leg. But something changed around month 4 or 5. He started being distant, making excuses not to visit, avoiding conversations about the future." "Did he explain why?" "Eventually. After I pressed him, he said he couldn't see himself spending his life with someone who was limited. That was his word. He said he needed a partner who could keep up with him, who could do all the things he wanted to do. Hiking, traveling, having an active life. He didn't think I could give him that anymore." The cruelty of the statement, delivered to someone still recovering from a life-altering trauma, was staggering. I felt anger on Nadia's behalf, anger at a man I had never met for his willingness to abandon her when she needed support most. "That's monstrous," I said. It was. But it also revealed something true about him, about us, about the foundation our relationship was built on. He loved the version of me that was convenient, that fit neatly into his life plans. When I became inconvenient, the love wasn't strong enough to hold. You deserved better. I know that now. It took a long time to believe it, but I know it. She met my eyes. "That's why I've been so cautious with you, Garrett. I need to know that you see me clearly, the limitations, the complications, all of it, and that you're choosing me anyway. Not the idea of me, not the Saturday morning version, but the real person with all her damage. I do see you. I have been seeing you for 5 months, and I'm choosing you anyway. You say that now, but being with me long-term means adapting to my needs, my limitations. It means planning around my energy levels, understanding that some days I won't be able to do things that seem simple. It means your daughter's growing attached to someone whose body is different, who might face additional challenges as time goes on." "Nadia." I reached across the table and took her hand, feeling the warmth of her fingers against mine. "I'm not Daniel. I don't want a partner who's convenient. I want a partner who's real. The complications you're describing don't scare me. They're just part of who you are, and I like who you are." She was quiet for a long moment, her eyes bright with what might have been tears. Then she squeezed my hand and said, "Okay, let's try this. Let's actually try." We left the restaurant together, walking slowly through the Pearl District as the evening cooled around us. At her car, I kissed her for the first time, a gentle kiss, tentative and searching, a question and an answer at once. "Next Saturday?" she asked. "Next Saturday. And maybe Tuesday too, if you're free." "I'm free. I've been keeping my schedule clear for months, hoping you'd ask." We kissed again, less tentatively this time, and then she drove away, and I walked to my own car feeling lighter than I had in years. The risks hadn't diminished, the complications remained, but for the first time since my divorce, I was moving towards something rather than away from something, and the direction felt right. Introducing Nadia formally to the girls as my girlfriend rather than our coffee shop friend required careful planning. I spent a week preparing them for the conversation, dropping hints about how much I enjoyed spending time with Nadia, asking how they felt about her, gauging their readiness for a shift in the relationship's definition. "Do you love her?" Hazel asked during one of these preparatory conversations. "I care about her very much. I'm not sure yet if it's love, that's a big word, but I know I want her to be part of our lives. Would she be our new mom?" "No, sweetheart. You already have a mom. Nadia would be something different, a friend, a companion, someone who cares about you and spends time with us. Like a stepmom, maybe eventually. We're not there yet. Right now, we're just getting to know each other better." Ivy's questions were more practical. Would Nadia come to their soccer games? Would she sleep at our house? Would she be there for breakfast? "We'll figure all of that out as we go," I told her. "The important thing is that nothing changes how much I love you both, or how important you are to me. You're still my top priority, no matter what happens with Nadia." The girls processed this information with the equanimity that children often display when adults expect drama. They had known Nadia for months, had already incorporated her into their understanding of the world. The shift from daddy's friend to daddy's girlfriend was a matter of terminology rather than transformation. Our first family activity as an officially defined unit was a trip to the Oregon Zoo, chosen because it offered attractions suitable for all participants. Paved paths accessible for Nadia's prosthetic, animals fascinating enough to hold the girls' attention, benches positioned throughout for rest breaks when needed. "The elephants are my favorite," Ivy announced as we approached the Africa exhibit. "They're so big, but so gentle." "Elephants are matriarchal," Nadia said. "The females lead the herds, and they have incredible memories. They can remember individual elephants they haven't seen in decades. Really, really. They also mourn their dead, visiting the bones of family members and touching them with their trunks. They're one of the few animals that seem to understand death the way humans do." Hazel was fascinated. "How do you know so much about elephants?" "I went through a phase in college where I was obsessed with animal cognition, the study of how animals think. I read every book I could find about intelligent species, elephants, octopuses, dolphins, crows. It was going to be my backup career if graphic design didn't work out." "You could still do it," Ivy suggested. "You could be a graphic designer and an animal scientist. Maybe. It's never too late to learn new things." Watching Nadia interact with my daughters, I felt something shift in my chest, a settling, a rightness. She didn't condescend to them or perform enthusiasm she didn't feel. She engaged with their questions seriously, shared information that genuinely interested her, treated them as small humans worthy of respect rather than children to be managed. We stopped for lunch at a picnic area near the primate exhibit, spreading out a blanket and the sandwiches I had packed that morning. Nadia sat with her prosthetic leg extended, and Ivy naturally curled up beside her, leaning against her arm while she ate. "This is nice," Nadia said quietly, meeting my eyes over the girls' heads. "This whole day, being part of something." "You are part of something. You have been for a while. I know. But today it feels official, like I belong here." "You do belong here. If you want to. I want to." The afternoon continued with visits to the remaining exhibits, interspersed with rest breaks and snack stops and the inevitable requests for gift shop souvenirs. By the time we reached the car, the girls were exhausted, the happy exhaustion of children who had been thoroughly entertained, and they fell asleep in the back seat before we reached the highway. "Thank you," Nadia said, watching the sleeping girls through the rearview mirror, "for including me, for trusting me with them. Thank you for being someone I could trust." I was terrified, honestly, the whole day, afraid I would say something wrong, or that they would suddenly decide they didn't like me after all, or that you would see me struggling with my leg and realize this was all a mistake. Was there struggling I didn't notice? Some. The paths were longer than I expected, and my leg was bothering me by the afternoon. But I didn't want to ask for breaks because I didn't want to slow everyone down. Nadia. I reached over and took her hand. You can always ask for what you need. The girls and I don't need to see every exhibit at maximum speed. We need to spend time together, which we can do just as easily sitting on a bench as walking through the zoo. I know, logically I know, but there's always this voice in my head telling me I'm a burden, that my needs are inconvenient, that if I ask for too much, people will leave. That's Daniel's voice, not mine. It's hard to tell the difference sometimes. Then I'll keep reminding you until you can. She squeezed my hand and didn't let go for the rest of the drive home. The months that followed were not without difficulty. Integrating Nadia into my life and the girls' lives required adjustments that sometimes chafed, negotiations that sometimes failed, patience that sometimes ran thin. There was the weekend when Nadia's phantom pain flared badly, a neurological phenomenon she had explained to me, but that I had never witnessed directly. She cancelled our plans at the last minute, apologizing through text messages that came in fragments as she tried to manage pain that had no physical source, that existed entirely in her brain's memory of a limb that was no longer there. I wanted to help, to be present, to do something. But she asked for space, explaining that the pain made her irritable and withdrawn, that she didn't want the girls to see her like that. I respected her request while struggling with the helplessness of watching someone I cared about suffer from a distance. There was the Sunday dinner at my parents' house, when my mother made a comment about Nadia's situation that carried undercurrents of concern about whether I was taking on too much. The comment was well-intentioned. My mother worried about me, wanted me to be happy, but it landed badly, reducing Nadia to a collection of challenges rather than a person I had chosen to be with. Nadia handled it with more grace than I would have managed in her position, deflecting the comment with humor and redirecting the conversation. But on the drive home, she was quiet, and when I asked what she was thinking, she said, "Your mother doesn't think I'm good enough for you." "Dace, my mother doesn't know you yet. She'll come around." "What if she doesn't? What if your family always sees me as the woman with one leg, the damaged person their son inexplicably fell in love with?" "Then they're wrong, and I'll tell them so." "You're not damaged, Nadia. You're different. Different isn't less. Sometimes it feels like less. When people look at me with pity or concern or that particular expression that says they're trying very hard not to notice my leg, sometimes it feels like less. I know. And I'm sorry that people make you feel that way. But their perception isn't your truth. You know who you are. I know who you are. The girls know who you are. Everyone else can figure it out or not." No, there were also challenges from the girls themselves. The inevitable complications of children adjusting to a new person in their father's life. Hazel went through a phase of testing Nadia, pushing boundaries to see how she would respond. Ivy went through a phase of clinginess, demanding attention from Nadia at moments when attention wasn't available. We navigated these challenges together, talking through strategies, adjusting approaches, learning from mistakes. Nadia was patient with the girls' testing behaviors, understanding that they needed to feel secure before they could fully accept her presence. I was patient with Nadia's occasional insecurities, understanding that her history made trust difficult even when she wanted to trust. "Is this normal?" Nadia asked one evening, after a particularly trying day when Hazel had refused to speak to her for reasons neither of us could identify. The constant negotiation, the emotional labor, the feeling that you're always one wrong move away from disaster. It's normal for blending families. Everything I've read says it takes years, 2 to 5 years, sometimes longer, for everyone to find their equilibrium. Years. But the trajectory matters more than the timeline. Are we moving in the right direction? Are things getting better overall, even when individual days are hard? I think so. Most days. Then we keep going. We keep showing up, keep trying, keep believing that the investment will pay off. She looked at me with an expression that combined exhaustion and affection in equal measure. "You're relentlessly optimistic. Has anyone ever told you that?" "I prefer strategically hopeful, Optimism without evidence is naive. Hope with consistent effort is just good planning. That sounds like something a history teacher would say. It sounds like something this history teacher would say, because I'm saying it, and I believe it. We're going to be okay, Nadia. All of us, together. She didn't look entirely convinced, but she also didn't argue. And the next morning, when Hazel emerged from her room and spontaneously hugged Nadia before breakfast, the first such gesture in weeks, I saw something shift in Nadia's face. Not complete reassurance, but the beginning of it, the first evidence that the investment was paying off. 1 year after our first official date, I asked Nadia to marry me. The proposal happened at Maple and Vine, at the same table where she had first invited me to share her space, where 5 months of Saturday mornings had built the foundation for everything that followed. The girls were there, which was deliberate. I wanted them to be part of the moment, to understand that this decision was a family decision rather than just a choice between two adults. I had consulted them in advance, of course. Hazel and Ivy were now 9 years old enough to have opinions about their father's romantic life, and mature enough to express those opinions thoughtfully. "Do you want Nadia to be part of our family permanently?" I had asked them, carefully framing the question to avoid leading them toward any particular answer. "Yes," Hazel said without hesitation. "She makes you happy, Daddy, and she's nice to us, and she knows things about octopuses." "I want her to stay," Ivy added. "I don't want her to go away like Mommy did." "She won't go away, sweetheart, not if she becomes part of our family officially." "Then yes, ask her to marry you." With their blessing secured, I planned the proposal with the thoroughness of someone who had learned to prepare for important moments. I arranged for the table to be reserved despite Maple and Vine's usual no-reservation policy. I brought the ring in a velvet box that I had hidden in my jacket pocket all morning. I coordinated with the barista to serve Nadia's coffee with a subtle wink that let me know the stage was set. We arrived at our usual time, finding the coffee shop quieter than normal, another detail I had arranged, asking friends who frequented the establishment to stay away for an hour. Nadia noticed something was different, but attributed it to seasonal variation rather than deliberate manipulation. "Strange that it's so empty," she observed. "Usually there's a line by now. Maybe everyone's sleeping in. It's been a rainy week." We ordered our usual drinks, black coffee for me, lavender latte for her, and settled at the window table with Hazel on one side and Ivy on the other. The girls were visibly nervous, their excitement threatening to burst through their carefully maintained composure. "Why are you two so fidgety?" Nadia asked, noticing their energy. "We're just happy," Hazel said, with a smile that conveyed far too much. Nadia looked at me, her expression shifting from confusion to suspicion to dawning recognition. "Garrett, what's happening?" "Nadia." I stood from my chair, then lowered myself to one knee beside the table, the traditional posture, the time-honored gesture. "We met at this table 18 months ago, when I was just a single dad looking for a place to sit, and you were a stranger, kind enough to share your space. Since then, you've become the most important person in my life outside of these two girls. You've shown me that love is possible after pain, that trust can be rebuilt, that second chances are worth taking." I pulled the ring box from my pocket and opened it, revealing the diamond I had selected with the help of Nadia's best friend, who had guided me toward a vintage style that she knew Nadia would love. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to wake up beside you every morning and go to sleep beside you every night. I want to build a home together, raise these girls together, face whatever challenges come our way together. So I'm asking, Nadia Holloway, will you marry me?" She was crying, tears streaming down her face, her hands covering her mouth, her whole body trembling with emotion. For a terrible moment, I feared she was going to say no, that I had miscalculated, that the answer would shatter the beautiful thing we had built. Then she said, "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." The girls erupted in cheers, their restrained excitement finally finding release. Other customers in the coffee shop, mostly friends and family I had secretly invited, joined in the celebration, applauding and offering congratulations. I slid the ring onto Nadia's finger and kissed her, tasting salt from her tears and sweetness from her smile. "I love you," I said. "I love you too. All of you. The whole package." Hazel and Ivy launched themselves at Nadia, wrapping their arms around her in an embrace that nearly toppled her chair. She laughed and held them close, and I watched my family, the family I had chosen, the family I was building, and felt a happiness so complete it almost hurt. We spent the rest of the morning celebrating, accepting congratulations from the parade of people who happened to stop by Maple and Vine. Nadia's parents arrived from Bend, having driven through the night after I called them with my plan. My parents came with champagne and a card that my mother had written herself, its contents finally reflecting acceptance rather than concern. "Welcome to the family," my mother said, hugging Nadia with genuine warmth. "I'm sorry if I ever made you feel unwelcome before. I was worried about my son, but I should have trusted his judgment." "Thank you," Nadia said. "That means more than you know." Later, after the crowd had dispersed and the girls had gone to play with friends, Nadia and I sat alone at our table, holding hands and absorbing the magnitude of what had just happened. "Are you scared?" she asked. "Terrified. You?" "Same, but the good kind of scared. The kind that means something important is at stake. We're going to be okay. You keep saying that, because I keep believing it, and eventually you will too." She smiled and squeezed my hand. "I'm getting there, one day at a time. That's all I ask." The engagement period lasted 8 months, during which we transformed from a dating couple into a family unit preparing to formalize our commitment. Nadia moved into the house with me and the girls, a transition that required adjustments in space and routine, but that ultimately felt natural, the physical arrangement catching up to the emotional reality. "Where should I put my desk?" Nadia asked on moving day, standing in the spare room that we had designated as her office. "I need good light for design work, but I also need to be able to close the door when the girls are being loud. The corner by the window. You'll get morning light, and the door is solid enough to muffle most of the noise." "Most of the noise?" "Hazel and Ivy are 9. Some noise is going to penetrate any barrier." She laughed and began arranging her equipment. The large monitor she used for design work, the tablet she sketched on, the reference books and supplies that constituted her professional life. Watching her create a space for herself in my home, our home now, I felt another piece of the puzzle click into place. Living together revealed new dimensions of our relationship. I learned that Nadia was a morning person who woke before dawn and did her best creative work before breakfast. She learned that I was a night owl who graded papers until midnight and struggled to function before coffee. We negotiated bedtime routines and bathroom schedules, discovered each other's irritating habits and endearing quirks. The girls adapted with the flexibility of children who had already learned that family structures could shift and reconfigure. They started calling Nadia's office the design room, and occasionally asked to watch her work, fascinated by the process of turning ideas into images. She taught them basic principles of color theory and composition, turning their questions into impromptu lessons that they absorbed without realizing they were learning. "I think Ivy has real artistic talent," Nadia told me one evening. "She has an eye for balance, for negative space. With training, she could do something with it." Her mother was artistic before she abandoned all that for yoga and self-discovery. Talent isn't just genetic, it needs nurturing. If we enroll her in art classes, encourage her practice, she could develop something meaningful. The "we" in her statement landed with particular weight. Nadia was already thinking like a parent, considering the girls' futures and how she could contribute to shaping them. The investment she was making went far beyond romantic commitment. She was committing to children who weren't biologically hers, to a family that would require her attention and energy for decades to come. "You're going to be a wonderful stepmother," I said. "I'm going to try. That's all I can promise." Trying is enough. It's more than enough. We planned the wedding together, making decisions that balanced my preference for simplicity with her preference for meaningful ritual. The ceremony would be small, immediate family and close friends, but the details would be carefully chosen. She designed our invitations herself, creating artwork that incorporated elements representing each member of our new family. I wrote our vows with the same attention I would bring to a particularly important lecture, crafting words that captured the specific texture of our love. The venue was a botanical garden outside Portland, chosen because it offered accessible paths for Nadia's prosthetic and beautiful settings for photographs. The date was set for June, when the rhododendrons would be blooming and the weather would be mild. Every element was considered, every potential challenge anticipated and addressed. "We're really doing this," Nadia said one night, lying beside me in the darkness of our bedroom. "In 3 months I'm going to be your wife. In 3 months I'm going to be your husband. The girls will be my stepdaughters. I'll be responsible for them. You're already responsible for them. In practice, the ceremony just makes it official. It's still terrifying. What if I fail them? What if I'm not what they need?" "You won't fail them. You've already shown them what commitment looks like, what patience looks like, what it means to love imperfect people despite their imperfections. They're not imperfect. Everyone is imperfect. The girls, me, you. We're all works in progress, all figuring it out as we go. The important thing isn't perfection, it's persistence. Showing up, trying, doing better tomorrow than we did today." She was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she said, "I love you, Garrett Cole. I love you too, Nadia Holloway. Soon to be Nadia Cole, if you're taking my name. I'm taking your name. I want to be part of your family, officially and completely. You already are." The morning of the wedding dawned clear and warm, the kind of June day that Portland occasionally produces between its characteristic rains, as if the weather itself had decided to cooperate with our plans. I woke early, checked on the girls, and stood at the window of my childhood bedroom in my parents' house, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. My mother found me there, bringing coffee and the quiet company that she had always offered during important moments. "Nervous?" she asked. "Yes, but the right kind of nervous. Your father was nervous on our wedding day. He almost forgot his vows halfway through the ceremony. Had to look at me to remember what he was supposed to say. Did he get it right eventually? He made something up that was better than what he had memorized. That's when I knew I had married the right person, someone who could improvise when plans failed, who could find his way to the right words even when he lost the script. I'll try to remember my vows. I've been practicing. You'll be fine. Nadia loves you and you love her. The words are just decoration around that central truth." The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock, giving us time for photographs in the morning light and final preparations in the afternoon. I dressed in the suit Nadia had helped me select. Navy blue, well-fitted, more stylish than anything I would have chosen on my own, and drove to the botanical garden with the girls, who were serving as junior bridesmaids in matching dresses that Nadia had designed herself. "Are you excited, Daddy?" Hazel asked from the back seat. "Very excited. Will Nadia look pretty?" "She always looks pretty, but I suspect she'll look especially pretty today." "I hope she doesn't cry," Ivy said. "She cries a lot when she's happy." "Happy crying is okay. It means she feels things deeply." The botanical garden was transformed when we arrived. Flowers arranged along the ceremony pathway, chairs set in rows for the 50 guests we had invited, an arch decorated with greenery and white roses at the spot where Nadia and I would exchange our vows. Friends and family were beginning to gather, dressed in their wedding guest best, greeting each other with the warmth of people assembled for a joyful occasion. I took my place at the front, flanked by my best man, my college roommate Thomas, who had been through my divorce and my rebuilding, and who had watched my relationship with Nadia develop with the mixture of relief and satisfaction that old friends bring to such moments. "This is really happening," he said, adjusting his boutonniere. Unless she changes her mind at the last minute. She won't. I've seen how she looks at you. That woman is all in. The music shifted, signaling the start of the ceremony. The girls walked down the aisle first, scattering flower petals with the careful concentration of children entrusted with an important task. Then the crowd rose, and Nadia appeared at the end of the pathway. She was wearing a dress of ivory silk that flowed around her like water, simple in design but elegant in execution. Her hair was adorned with small flowers that matched the arch's decorations. She moved toward me with the confidence I had come to associate with her, not hiding her prosthetic leg, but not drawing attention to it either, simply existing in her body with the grace that had captivated me since the beginning. Our eyes met, and everything else fell away. The guests, the flowers, the music, all of it became background to the essential fact of Nadia walking toward me, choosing me, committing herself to a life that would include my children and my complications, and all the ways that love is harder than it looks in movies. She reached me, and I took her hands. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi." The officiant began speaking, words about love and commitment, about the journey we had taken to arrive at this moment. I heard fragments but couldn't have repeated them. My attention was entirely absorbed by Nadia's face, by the emotion in her eyes, by the reality of what we were about to do. Then it was time for the vows. "Nadia," I said, my voice steadier than I had expected, 18 months ago, you invited me to share your table when I was just a stranger with nowhere to sit. You could have ignored me, could have protected your quiet morning with a polite refusal. Instead, you opened your space, and in doing so, opened a door to everything that followed. I didn't know that morning that I was meeting my future. I didn't know that the woman with the book and the crutch would become the center of my life. But some things are only visible in retrospect, the patterns that emerge when you look back at the path you've traveled. Today, I commit to walking forward with you, wherever the path leads. I commit to sharing tables and sharing burdens, to holding your hand through hard days and celebrating with you on good ones. I commit to being your partner, your advocate, your home. I love you, Nadia. I will love you tomorrow and every tomorrow after that. She was crying, the happy crying Ivy had predicted, but she didn't seem embarrassed by it. She simply smiled through the tears and began her own vows. "Garrett, when you asked to share my table, I almost said no. I was protecting myself, hiding behind my book and my solitude, convinced that it was safer to be alone than to risk connection. But something about you, your nervous smile, your purple rain-coated children, your obvious desperation for a place to sit, convinced me to take a chance. That chance led here, to this garden, to this moment, to a family I never expected to have. I came to you carrying damage, carrying fear, carrying the certainty that I was too difficult to love. You've shown me that I was wrong. You've loved me through phantom pain and bad days, through insecurity and self-doubt. You've loved your daughters into accepting me, and you've loved me into accepting myself. Today, I commit to loving you back with everything I have. I commit to being a partner to you and a parent to Hazel and Ivy, to building a home where everyone belongs. I love you, Garrett. This love is the most unexpected gift of my life. At dish, we exchanged rings, simple bands that symbolize the circle of commitment, unbroken and continuous. The officiant pronounced us married. I kissed Nadia while our guests applauded, while our daughters cheered, while the afternoon sun illuminated the botanical garden in light that felt almost transcendent. "We did it," she said, her face close to mine. "We did it. What happens now?" "Now we live the life we just promised each other, day by day, year by year, for as long as we have." That sounds like a lot. It's everything, and it's exactly what I want. The first year of marriage brought adjustments that we hadn't anticipated, challenges that we hadn't imagined, and joys that exceeded our expectations. We discovered the particular intimacy of truly shared living, not just the logistics of cohabitation, but the deeper knowing that comes from seeing someone in every mood and moment. I learned that Nadia talked in her sleep, mumbling fragments of conversations that sometimes made me laugh and sometimes broke my heart. She learned that I became irritable when I skipped meals, a pattern I had never recognized in myself until she pointed it out with gentle firmness. "You need to eat lunch," she said, after a particularly difficult evening when I had snapped at Hazel over a minor issue. "When you don't eat, you become a different person, a worse person. I forget when I'm busy with grading or meetings. Then set an alarm. I'll text you reminders, whatever it takes. The girls don't deserve hungry dad when regular dad is so much better." The solution was simple. Alarms, snacks in my desk drawer, a deliberate attention to nutrition that I had never prioritized before. But the fact that Nadia had noticed, had cared enough to identify the pattern and insist on addressing it, meant more than the solution itself. She was paying attention. She was invested in making our life together work. The girls continued to thrive under Nadia's presence. Hazel channeled her intellectual curiosity into increasingly sophisticated questions about the world, and Nadia met her curiosity with patient engagement. Ivy's artistic interest blossomed into genuine talent, nurtured by the art classes we enrolled her in, and by Nadia's willingness to critique her work with honest feedback that pushed her to improve. "You're hard on her sometimes," I observed, watching Nadia point out compositional flaws in one of Ivy's drawings. "Because she's good, and she can be better. There's no value in telling someone their mediocre work is great. It doesn't help them grow. She's 10. She's 10 and talented, which means the habits she forms now will shape the artist she becomes. I'm not crushing her spirit, I'm building her skills." She was right, though it took me time to fully understand her approach. Ivy responded to the honest feedback with determination rather than discouragement, applying Nadia's suggestions and returning with improved work. The relationship between them became something like a mentorship, shaped by shared passion and mutual respect. Nadia's work flourished during this period, her business growing as word of mouth spread among Portland's creative community. She took on larger projects, worked with more prestigious clients, established herself as a designer worth paying premium rates to hire. The success brought financial comfort, but also increased demands on her time and energy. Demands she had to balance against her commitments to our family. "I turned down a project today," she told me one evening. "A big one. National campaign for a company I've wanted to work with for years." "Why did you turn it down?" "Because it would have required travel, 3 months of intense work, 80-hour weeks." I looked at the calendar and realized I would miss Ivy's recital, Hazel's science fair, our anniversary. I would become a ghost in this family, present in name only. "That was your decision to make. I wouldn't have asked you to refuse." "I know, but you would have been disappointed if I accepted, even if you didn't say it. And I would have been disappointed in myself. The work matters, but it doesn't matter more than this." Her sacrifice, choosing our family over a career opportunity she had longed for, deepened my appreciation for the commitment she had made. Marriage wasn't just a ceremony or a legal status. It was a continuous series of choices, each one reinforcing or undermining the partnership we had built. I tried to match her commitment with my own sacrifices, large and small. I reduced my involvement in after-school activities that took me away from home. I learned to manage my energy more effectively, reserving enough for family time rather than depleting myself entirely with work. I made myself available, present, engaged, not just physically but emotionally and mentally. "You're different than you were," my sister observed during a visit. "More relaxed, happier. I have more to be happy about. It's not just the circumstances, though. It's you. You've changed. Grown, maybe. Nadia pushes me to be better, not through criticism, through example. Watching her navigate her challenges with such grace makes me want to navigate mine with similar dignity. That's the mark of a good partnership. You make each other better instead of worse. I thought about her observation often in the months that followed. The mark of a good partnership, making each other better. It was a standard worth striving for, a measure by which to evaluate our choices and our growth. The third year of our marriage brought a crisis that tested everything we had built. It began with a routine medical appointment, Nadia's annual checkup with the specialist who monitored her amputation site and prosthetic fit. She came home from the appointment with an expression I had learned to recognize as controlled fear. "They found something," she said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table while the girls were at school. "On the imaging, it's probably nothing, scar tissue, an anomaly, but they want to do additional tests, a biopsy." "When?" "Next week." They said not to worry, that most of these findings turn out to be benign. But you're worried." "I'm terrified. The last time doctors found something unexpected, it cost me my leg. I know it's not the same. I know this is probably nothing, but my brain won't stop making connections." I moved to her side of the table and held her, feeling the trembling in her body that her voice had concealed. The strength she projected, the resilience that had carried her through accident and recovery and rebuilding, was real, but it wasn't infinite. Beneath the surface, she was as vulnerable as anyone, as capable of fear and desperation as the person she had been lying in the wreckage of her car 5 years ago. "Whatever happens, we face it together," I said. "That's what we promised each other. What if it's serious? What if I get sick, really sick? You didn't sign up for that, Garrett. You signed up for a partner with one leg, not a partner with cancer. I signed up for you. All of you, in every possible version. The healthy version and the sick version. The strong version and the scared version. That's what marriage means. I don't want to be a burden. You could never be a burden. You're my wife, my partner, my person." The week between the appointment and the biopsy was excruciating. We went through the motions of normal life, work, school, dinners, bedtime routines, while the uncertainty hung over us like a shadow. I watched Nadia struggle to maintain composure for the girl's sake, putting on a brave face that I knew was costing her enormous effort. "Are you okay, Nadia?" Hazel asked one evening. "You seem sad." "I'm just tired, sweetheart. Work has been busy. You can tell us if something's wrong. We're your family now. We help each other." The simple declaration from a 10-year-old who had absorbed the values we had tried to model brought tears to Nadia's eyes. "I know, Hazel, and if there's anything important to tell, I will. I promise." The biopsy results came back benign. The anomaly was scar tissue from the original accident, nothing more. Nadia received the news via phone call while I was teaching, and she texted me immediately. "All clear. Nothing to worry about. I love you." I stepped out of my classroom, something I never did, and called her back. "Thank God," I said, leaning against the hallway wall. "Thank God, thank God. I'm okay. It's okay. We're okay." I was so scared. Me too. But we got through it together, just like we promised. The crisis passed, but it left marks that shaped us. We talked more openly about fears and vulnerabilities, about the ways that life could change without warning. We made plans, advanced directives, life insurance, the practical preparations that adults make when they acknowledge mortality. We held each other tighter, appreciated each other more, treated our time together as the precious resource it was. "I don't want to waste any of this," Nadia said one night, lying in bed after a long and ordinary day. "Any of our life together. I spent so many years protecting myself from pain that I forgot to open myself to joy. I don't want to make that mistake anymore. What would opening to joy look like? Saying yes more, trying things that scare me, trusting that whatever happens, I have people who will help me through it." You do have people. You have me and the girls and everyone who loves you. I know, I finally know. 5 years after our wedding, I stood in a different doorway, the door to Ivy's bedroom, watching my now 14-year-old daughter show Nadia her latest artwork. The piece was sophisticated, a digital illustration that demonstrated the skills she had been developing since Nadia first recognized her talent. "The composition is stronger than your last piece," Nadia was saying. "See how the eye moves from the figure to the background. That's the principle we talked about last month. I practiced a lot. It shows. You're ready for something more challenging. I have a client project that could use an assistant. Paid work, real deadlines. Would you be interested? Ivy's face lit up with the particular joy of recognition. Someone believing in her capabilities enough to trust her with meaningful responsibility. Really? You'd let me work with you? You've earned it. This isn't charity, it's acknowledgement of your development. You're good, Ivy. Good enough to start building a portfolio. I retreated from the doorway before they noticed me watching, carrying the image with me into the rest of my evening. Nadia and Ivy, mentor and student, stepmother and stepdaughter, a relationship that had grown organically from those early Saturday mornings into something substantial and real. Hazel was in the living room, studying for a history test with the focus she brought to all academic pursuits. At 14, she had become the scholar I had always suspected she might be, intellectually curious, academically ambitious, destined for achievements that would exceed my own. "Dad, can you explain the significance of the Louisiana Purchase?" she asked. "The textbook is confusing." The Louisiana Purchase doubled the size of the United States for about 3 cents an acre. It gave the nation control of the Mississippi River, resolved tensions with France, and set the stage for westward expansion. But the most interesting part is that Jefferson had constitutional doubts about whether he had the authority to make the deal. Why did he do it anyway? Because the opportunity was too good to pass up. Sometimes leaders have to make decisions that push the boundaries of their authority when the stakes are high enough. That sounds like rationalization. It was rationalization, but it also worked out. History is full of decisions that were questionable at the time, but proved wise in retrospect. The conversation continued, evolving into a discussion that ranged across constitutional law and executive power, and the ways that leaders balance principle against pragmatism. These were my favorite moments as a father, the times when teaching and parenting merged, when I could share my passion for history with a child who genuinely wanted to learn. Nadia emerged from Ivy's room and joined us in the living room, settling onto the couch with the easy familiarity of someone completely at home. She had stopped using her crutch years ago. Advances in prosthetic technology had given her a leg that was comfortable enough for all-day wear, but she still moved with the particular consciousness of someone who had learned to negotiate the world differently than most people. "Ivy's going to help with the Morrison project," she announced. "Paid work, supervised by me. I think she's ready." "That's wonderful. She'll be thrilled." "She already is. She's probably texting her friends about it right now." I looked around the room, my wife, my daughters, the home we had built together. The path that had led here was marked by pain and loss and fear, but also by courage and love and the persistent hope that better things were possible. We had created something from the wreckage of our separate pasts, something strong enough to withstand the challenges we had faced and flexible enough to grow with the people we were becoming. "I love you," I said to Nadia. "I love you too." Random declaration, but appreciated. Not random, just, this is good. What we have. I wanted to acknowledge it. It is good. Better than I ever expected. Hazel looked up from her textbook. "Are you two having a moment? Should Ivy and I leave?" "We're just being appreciative," Nadia said, "which you'll understand when you're older and have built something worth appreciating." "I appreciate plenty of things. My phone, my friends. The fact that Dad makes really good pasta. I do make good pasta. The best pasta. See? Appreciation." The conversation devolved into friendly teasing, the comfortable chaos of family life. Later that night, after the girls were asleep and the house was quiet, Nadia and I sat on the back porch, looking at the stars that were visible above Portland's light pollution. "Do you remember the first thing I said to you?" she asked. "You said, 'Hey, single dad, can I share this table?' But it was more like you were inviting me to share yours." "I was. I saw you standing there looking overwhelmed, and I thought, here's someone who's struggling, who could use a break. I didn't expect anything beyond that, just a small kindness for a stranger. And look where that kindness led. Here, to this porch, this house, this family. It's not what I imagined for my life, but it's better than anything I could have imagined." The paths we didn't plan are sometimes the best ones. Is that something you tell your students? It's something I've learned from living. Plans matter, but so does flexibility, the ability to recognize when an unexpected opportunity appears and have the courage to pursue it. She leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, and we sat in comfortable silence while the night deepened around us. The journey wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more joys, more ordinary days and extraordinary moments, but we had proven we could navigate it together. That was the gift she had given me, that morning at Maple and Vine, the chance to share a table and everything that came after.